Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today in our video, we will talk about the history of Islam in Norway, the number of Muslims living in Norway, their lifestyle and the problems they face. If you watch the video without any transition until the end, you will be aware of all this information. Let's start with the history of Islam in Norway. It's a fascinating story that's relatively recent compared to other European countries, but it's packed with interesting developments over the last few decades. Norway's initial encounter with Islam dates back to 1260, when King Håkon Håkonsson sent an envoy with substantial gifts to Tunis. In return, the Sultan of Tunis sent an envoy to Norway. However, the first notable wave of Muslim migration to Norway didn't occur until the 1960s. Sure, there were some interactions through trade and diplomacy, but nothing that led to established communities. The real story begins in the late 1960s when Norway's economy was booming and they needed workers. Similar to other European countries, by 1970, Norway had experienced a significant influx of labor migrants. The reasons behind Muslim immigration to Norway can be divided into two main groups. Immigrants from countries such as Pakistan, Turkey, and Morocco migrate to Norway for economic reasons. Immigrants from countries such as Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan migrate to Norway to escape war, famine, poverty, and other hardships. These were mostly young men who thought they'd work for a while and then head back home. But here's where it gets interesting. Many of these workers decided to stay in Norway permanently. So in the 70s and 80s, we see a phase of family reunification. Wives and kids start joining the men who came over earlier. This is when we start seeing the first Islamic organizations pop up. The first mosques opening, often in converted buildings, and halal food markets appearing. The story takes another turn in the 80s and 90s. This time, it's not about work, it's about safety. As we have mentioned before, we see that refugees come from places such as Iran, Bosnia, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. This really diversified the Muslim population in Norway, bringing in people with different backgrounds and reasons for coming. Today, the country continues to attract migrants due to its high living standards and job opportunities. As we move into the 90s and 2000s, we see Muslim communities becoming more established. They're building proper mosques, setting up Islamic schools, and getting more involved in interfaith dialogue. In 1993, they even set up the Islamic Council Norway to represent Muslim interests at a national level. Now here's where it gets really interesting. As the children of these immigrants grow up in Norway, we start seeing new dynamics. These second and third generation Muslims are focusing on questions of identity and belonging. They're getting higher education, achieving professionally, and participating more in politics and culture. In recent years, say from the 2010s onwards, Muslims have become more visible in public life. You see them in politics, in the media. But it's not all smooth sailing. There are debates about integration, secularism, and religious freedom. The Muslim community itself is becoming more diverse, with liberal and progressive voices emerging. And while there have been challenges with Islamophobia and far-right movements, we're also seeing increased efforts at intercultural understanding. So really, the story of Islam in Norway is about migration, community building, and the ongoing process of figuring out how to belong in a multicultural society. It's complex, it's evolving, but it's also a story of progress and integration. Despite the challenges, there have been significant strides in mutual understanding between Muslim communities and the broader Norwegian society. Now let's talk about the Muslim population in Norway today. It's a bit tricky to get exact numbers because, Norway doesn't actually collect data on religious affiliation in its census. But from what we can tell, as of early 2024, Muslims make up about 5.7% of Norway's population. That's roughly 310,000 people in a country of about 5.4 million. Pretty significant, right? But here's the thing, this number has grown a lot over the years. Back in 1980, we're talking less than 1% of the population. By 2000, it was up to about 1.52%. And in 2010, it was around 3 to 3.5%. So you can see it's been steadily increasing. Now, when we look at the makeup of this Muslim population, it's mostly Sunni, about 85–90%. The rest are primarily Shia, with a sprinkling of other denominations. It's a diverse bunch, coming from all over the place. The largest groups are from Pakistan. Many of them trace their roots back to that first wave of workers in the 60s and 70s. Then you've got significant communities from Somalia, Iraq, and Bosnia, many of whom came as refugees. There are also folks from Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Morocco, and more recently, Syria. Interestingly, the Muslim population isn't spread evenly across Norway. Oslo, the capital, has the biggest concentration. About 10 to 15% of the city's population is Muslim. You'll find significant communities in other cities too, like Bergen, Trondheim, and Stavanger. But in rural areas, Muslim communities tend to be smaller and more spread out. One thing to note is that the Muslim population in Norway tends to be younger than the overall population. You've got a higher proportion of children and young adults and fewer elderly folks. This is pretty typical for immigrant populations, and it contributes to the community's growth through higher birth rates. It's also worth mentioning that a growing number of Muslims in Norway are Norwegian citizens, either through naturalization or by birth. Many of the second and third generation Muslims strongly identify as Norwegian, while also maintaining connections to their cultural heritage. But here's the important thing to remember. When we talk about Muslims in Norway, we're not talking about a monolithic group. There's significant diversity within the community. You've got different schools of thought within both Sunni and Shia traditions, varying levels of religious observance, different cultural practices, and a whole range of socio-economic statuses and political views. In recent years, we've seen increased visibility of Muslims in various sectors of Norwegian society. There are more mosques and Islamic cultural centers popping up, and we're even seeing the emergence of Norwegian-language Islamic literature and media. The Islamic Council Norway, established in 1993, brings together all Muslim associations under one umbrella. The Council's mission is to safeguard the rights of Muslims and promote Christian-Muslim dialogue in the country. According to a survey, among Muslims who consider Islam an essential part of their lives, Pakistani, Somali, and Turkish immigrants are the most active participants in the activities organized by these associations. In contrast, Bosnian and Iranian Muslims are the least involved. So that's the picture of the Muslim population in Norway today. It's a growing, diverse, and dynamic community that's becoming an increasingly integral part of Norwegian society. All right, let's dive into the challenges that Muslims in Norway are facing. It's a complex situation, you know. First off, there's this whole integration and identity thing. Imagine trying to balance your cultural and religious identity with fitting into Norwegian society. It's not easy, especially for first-generation immigrants. You've got language barriers to deal with, and even when you've got the language down, there's still all these cultural norms to navigate. And then there's discrimination. It's sad, but it's real. Some Muslims find it harder to get jobs or rent apartments just because of their names or appearance. There have been cases of hate speech, and even some attacks on mosques. It's not widespread, but it happens, and it's a real concern for the community. Now, let's talk about religious accommodation. It can be tricky in the workplace, you know? Think about prayer times, religious holidays, dress codes, all that stuff. And in schools, there have been debates about religious symbols and what should be taught in religious education classes. Even something as basic as food can be an issue. Halal options aren't always readily available, especially in public institutions. When it comes to economics, there are some disparities. On average, Muslim immigrants tend to have higher unemployment rates and lower incomes compared to the general population. This gap does narrow with second and third generations, but it's still there. Political representation is another challenge. Despite some notable exceptions, Muslims are generally underrepresented in high-level political positions. It's getting better, but there's still a way to go. For young Muslims, there are unique challenges. Some struggle with academic performance, and there's this fear, albeit a very small issue numerically, about radicalization. It puts a lot of scrutiny on Muslim youth. And imagine trying to balance Norwegian youth culture with traditional family expectations. Not an easy task. Gender issues are also in the mix. There are ongoing debates about things like arranged marriages, gender roles, and women's rights. And when it comes to LGBTQ+ rights, there can be tension between conservative religious views and Norway's progressive stance. Public perception is another hurdle. With all the global focus on terrorism, sometimes Muslim communities face unfair suspicion, and there are a lot of cultural misunderstandings due to lack of knowledge about Islamic practices. But here's the thing, it's not all doom and gloom. Many Muslims in Norway report high levels of life satisfaction and integration. The Norwegian authorities and civil society organizations are working on addressing these issues. There are anti-discrimination laws, integration programs, dialogue forums, and educational initiatives to promote understanding. And you know what's really encouraging? Many Muslims in Norway are actively engaged in addressing these challenges themselves. They're contributing to public discourse and working towards better integration and mutual understanding. So yeah, there are challenges, but there's also progress. It's an evolving situation as Norway continues to navigate being an increasingly diverse and multicultural society. It's complex, but there's reason to be hopeful about the future. So, where do most Muslims in Norway live? Well, as you might guess, they're mainly in the urban areas. Oslo is the big one. It's got the largest Muslim population by far. We're talking about 10 to 15% of Oslo's population being Muslim. That's a significant chunk. You'll find Muslim communities in other cities too, like Bergen, Trondheim, and Stavanger. But in the rural areas, not so much. You might find smaller, more spread out Muslim communities there. Now, let's talk about their daily lives. It's important to remember that Muslims in Norway are just as diverse as any other group, right? You've got your professionals, students, stay-at-home parents, entrepreneurs, you name it. Their daily routines can vary a lot depending on their job, family situation, and how religious they are. For practicing Muslims, the day often starts early with the Fajr prayer. That's the dawn prayer. Then it's off to work or school, just like everyone else. Many Muslims work in all sorts of fields: healthcare, education, IT, retail, you name it. Some run their own businesses, often in sectors like grocery stores, restaurants, or taxi services. Prayer is a big part of the day for observant Muslims. They pray 5 times a day, and that can sometimes be a challenge in the workplace or at school. Some employers provide prayer rooms, but not all do. So you might see Muslims taking short breaks to pray, sometimes in quiet corners or empty rooms. Food is another important aspect. Halal food is much more readily available now than it was a few decades ago, especially in the bigger cities. You'll find halal butchers, restaurants, and even sections in regular supermarkets. But in smaller towns, it can still be a bit of a challenge. For kids and teenagers, life often revolves around school, just like for other Norwegian youth. Many attend public schools while some go to Islamic schools. After school, you might find them at Quran classes or other religious education programs. Fridays are special for many Muslims. That's when they attend Friday prayers at the mosque. In cities like Oslo, you'll see mosques getting pretty busy around lunchtime on Fridays. Weekends? Well, that varies a lot. Some families might spend time at the mosque or at community events. Others might be out enjoying Norway's beautiful nature, or just hanging out with friends and family. During Ramadan, daily life changes quite a bit. Muslims fast from dawn to sunset, which can be really challenging in Norway, where summer days are super long. You'll often see Muslim families and friends gathering for iftar, the meal to break the fast, in the evenings. One thing that's interesting is how the second and third generations often blend Norwegian and their ancestral cultures. You might see young Muslims celebrating both Eid and Christmas, for example. So yeah, that's a bit about daily life for Muslims in Norway. It's a mix, you know. They're part of the fabric of Norwegian society, going about their daily lives, while also maintaining their religious and cultural practices. It's all part of the diversity that makes up modern Norway. All right, let's talk about Islam in Norway. It's a pretty complex situation, you know. We've seen a big increase in the Muslim population here in recent years, and it's brought both good things and some challenges. Now, most Norwegians are cool with diversity, but yeah, we've had some issues with Islamophobia. It's not just us, though. You see this kind of thing in other European countries, too. Politics plays a big role in all this. Take the Progress Party, for example. They've caught some flack for how they talk about immigration and Islam. And then you've got these smaller, more extreme groups like Sion Stop Islamization of Norway. They're totally against Islamic influence here. These guys don't speak for most Norwegians, but they sure do make some noise. Muslims here have had to deal with some tough stuff. Discrimination in jobs, housing, just day-to-day life. Muslim women wearing hijabs, they've got it especially hard sometimes. We've even seen some hate crimes, which is really sad. Mosques getting vandalized, people being attacked. The worst was that terrible attack by Breivik in 2011. He was partly motivated by anti-Islamic views. But here's the thing, it's not all bad news. The government and lots of organizations are working hard to fight Islamophobia. We've got laws against discrimination, and there's a big push for more understanding between different faiths. And you know what? Loads of Norwegians are totally against Islamophobia. When there's an anti-Muslim incident, you often see way more people show up to support the Muslim community. It's different depending on where you are in Norway too. In the big cities, Muslims are often just a normal part of the community. But in the countryside, where there aren't as many Muslims, you might see more misunderstandings. So yeah, Islamophobia is a thing here, but it's not going unchallenged. We're talking about these issues, trying to figure it out. It's complicated for sure, but we're working on it. Norway's changing, becoming more diverse, and we're all learning how to live together. Dear viewers, if you found this video interesting and you want to stay updated on such topics, why don't you hit the subscribe button? I always try to dive into such social issues and give you the whole picture. Also, your support really helps me to keep producing such content. And you know what? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe you have experiences to share or questions you'd like to see answered in future videos. Leave a comment below and let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to like this video if you learned something new. This really helps others to find this content as well. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.